don't understand. I've been here for 8 years. 8 years. I know, James, this isn't personal. The company's restructuring. Restructuring? You just hired 2 new guys last month!
They're contract workers, cheaper, I'm sorry.
I have a family, a mortgage. How am I supposed to be?
Security will walk you out.
Again, I'm truly sorry.
In one conversation, the future he'd worked a decade to build just disappeared. James sat in his car in the parking lot for an hour, staring at the cardboard box on his passenger seat. Inside were 8 years of his life. A coffee mug, a photo of his kids, some awards that suddenly felt meaningless. He was 43. He had 2 kids in school, a wife who'd just gone part-time to be home more, and a mortgage that didn't care about corporate restructuring. One night, his daughter asked him to pray before dinner. He hesitated. He didn't feel like praying, didn't feel like God was listening, but he bowed his head and mumbled something generic. His daughter, 7 years old, interrupted. "Daddy, can I pray?" "Sure, sweetheart." "God, thank you that Daddy's home more now. Thank you that he can pick me up from school. And please help him find the job you have for him. Amen." Something cracked open in his chest. The first week, he stayed busy, updated his resume, applied to dozens of jobs, told himself this was just a setback. But the rejections started piling up. Overqualified, looking for someone with a different skill set. Position filled. By week 3, the fear set in. By week 6, the shame. He stopped telling his wife how many applications he'd sent. He started avoiding friends. He felt like a failure. That night, James opened his Bible for the first time in months. He ended up in Jeremiah 29:11, a verse he'd heard 100 times, but never really needed. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." For the first time, he considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, losing his job wasn't the end of the plan. Maybe it was part of it. He thought about how miserable he'd been at that company, how he'd complained for years about the politics, the long hours, the lack of purpose. He'd stayed because it was safe, comfortable, predictable. But comfortable isn't always God's goal. Growth is. He started praying differently. Not, "God, give me my old life back," but "God, show me what you want me to do." 2 months later, a former coworker called. A startup was looking for someone with James's exact experience, but it was a risk. Lower pay at first, no guaranteed stability, but it was innovative, purpose-driven work in a field he'd always been curious about. The old James would have said no, too risky. But this James had learned something in the waiting. God doesn't waste seasons. He uses them. James took the job. It was hard at first, financially tight, learning curve steep. But within a year, he was thriving. The company grew. So did his role. But more than that, he felt alive again. And he realized something profound. He'd spent years asking God to bless his plans. He'd never stopped to ask what God's plans were. God's plan doesn't always feel like a blessing at first. Sometimes it feels like loss, confusion, or delay. Trust the process. Closed doors aren't rejections, they're redirections. What feels like an ending might be the setup for something better. Comfort can be a cage. Sometimes God removes what's comfortable to lead you into what's purposeful. Your worth isn't in your job title. You are valuable because you are His, not because of what you produce. If you're in a season where nothing makes sense and all the doors are closing, don't assume God is absent. he might just be clearing the path for something you never had the courage to ask for. Have you ever lost something you thought you needed, only to realize later it was leading you somewhere better? Share your story below.